Natasha,
Debbie,
show.
the show.
Welcome to it. Just two patriotic girls.
Learning about the world.
So please, don't take us the wrong way.
Hi. Welcome to the show. I don't know what's going on here. Seem to be having a Care Bear. Come on, get in here. Maybe we'll do the show with Care Bear. So welcome to the Care Bear and Debbie show. Natasha will be here in a minute because she is going to come sit down with me.
I'm about to get in trouble, aren't I?
Come on, get in here.
Fine. Ha. But I had to because I'm wearing my Care Bear sweatshirt.
It does go with your shirt. I was wondering what you had behind your back.
You knew what I had behind my back. Did you
I
not?
wasn't sure.
Really?
I thought maybe, but I wasn't sure.
Well, it could have been. I have a lot of stuffed animals in the corner today. No, but like, seriously. I've had this guy since I don't know, 30 plus years. He's original.
It's a long time.
Anyway, no one cares. No, but today's going to be kind of a hardcore episode, I have a feeling. So thought I'd bring a little care and a little bear
Little
to
love.
the show.
Little love and comfort into
Yeah,
the show.
a little loving comfort with my little host of animals over here. But welcome to the show. We're excited about this episode. We've been asked
So many times for like 2 years.
so many times we've been asked to do this that I've told people in the comments, like, yeah, we've already watched it. We can't do it because we wanted to wait.
And that's not true. We have not seen it.
We haven't seen it. But we wanted to wait because so many other people have done it and we haven't. So we hope that you're interested in it. Yeah, what's it called?
We are going to watch Every Country England Has Invaded Visualized.
As opposed to audioized. Audioized? I'll be here all week.
Sounds like
kids.
something I would have said.
If you guys like the content that we put out for you here on YouTube and you want to see the Natasha and Debbie show longer than just the end of this year, and I'm being serious about that,
Please hit that like button.
Yeah. But most importantly, subscribe to the channel. Now, again, go back and check some of our other stuff out to make sure you want to, but we are on the road to 100,000K.
We are, so make sure you're a part of it if you want to be.
Yeah, but we need your support to continue doing these videos. So hopefully you'll join. So yeah, I don't want to take too much time up. I want to check this video out. Even though people have asked us to do this so many times, no one's really said much about it. But I don't expect it to be much of the world that hasn't been invaded by England.
I know, it seems like they've kind of been everywhere already, so
Yeah.
I mean, this will definitely, seeing it on it as a visual will definitely help.
I think so. But you know, I don't know if they'll explain like with the invasions, dates, things like that, but we'll see. So again, if you haven't seen this before, you're in for I guess a treat. I don't know. We'll find out together. So it's time for Every Country England Has Invaded Visualized.
For a good chunk of the past few centuries, this music was the final boss music played for people across the entire world. The English and later the British have been responsible for invading and conquering more countries and people than any other nation in human history. And honestly, it's startling just how many places they've been to. In this video, I'm going to do my best at attempting to visualize all of Britain's invasions and conquests for you, continent by continent, in as brief a time as possible. So let's begin with the closest continent to Britain, Europe. Ireland was the first target of British conquests and was invaded as early as 1169. Within 400 years of gradual conquests, the entire island was ruled by the British and remained that way until most of it was granted independence in 1921. Historically, France has probably been invaded by the English more times than any other country in the world. Just take a look at this huge list of invasions.
Yeah, why is that?
Well, I guess they're so close.
England and France, England and France, England and France.
But wow, that's a lot of times to invade.
That is actually freaking nuts.
That's incredible.
Well, I didn't realize Ireland was that long. 1169 to 1921. Okay. Okay. You guys have pretty much always been at war with France until after that word I can't say very well. Huh.
There's not even enough time to talk about a third of these, and for a time, all of this territory inside of modern France was directly controlled by the English, with Calais being the final piece that fell
Didn't
in
know that.
1557. Well, except for that time when the British took over Corsica for a couple years. The British continue to invade Spain by the millions every winter, but in the past, they've come with a lot
Every winter? What?
It's odd.
Yeah, I didn't know this. I didn't know this. I have a feeling I didn't know any of this stuff here, so.
I know. I kind of learning a lot as
I know, and it's only been on for a minute.
we're just beginning this.
continue to invade Spain by the millions every winter, but in the past, they've come with a lot less friendly intentions. English and later British soldiers invaded under the Black Prince in 1367 and continued on through the first, second, third, and fourth raids on Cadiz and that time when the British took over Gibraltar and Minorca. They gave Minorca back, but decided on keeping Gibraltar forever. In recent history, the British have invaded Belgium in order to support the Belgians, but that wasn't always the case. They conducted two pretty large-scale invasions of modern-day Belgium in 1654 and again in 1701, and Flanders itself was ruled by the English for a few years in the 14th century. The Netherlands was one of England's historical arch-rivals, and so there's been plenty of invasions going in this direction across the 17th and 18th centuries. In 1940, the British technically invaded and took over Iceland peacefully for a year in order to prevent it from falling into the hands of the Germans.
Didn't
But
know
this
that.
was heavily protested by the Icelandic government at the time, so in my books, it still counts as an invasion. Italy, of course, was invaded by the British Army during the Second World War as well in 1943, but there were plenty of invasions before then, dating back to Richard the Lionheart's invasion in 1190. Germany, too, was obviously invaded by the British Army in 1945, and northwestern Germany was occupied by the British for 3 years.
Okay, so I didn't know we were going to be doing, like, based on, like, World War II and stuff. When essentially, my definition of invasion is different to that in the sense of, like, we all know about World War II, right? But yeah, I mean, technically it's an invasion.
It is technically an invasion.
But it wasn't, it wasn't just,
Yeah, I thought it was all going to be like
The UK.
pre-1900s.
well, it wasn't just the UK that invaded,
Yeah.
it was a lot of other countries, the Allies in general.
Mhm.
until 1948, but a lot of German territory was ruled by Britain long before then. The islands of Heligoland were British for most of the 19th century, and the Kingdom of Hanover was effectively ruled under a personal union for over a century between 1714 and 1837. Austria was also invaded in 1945, and the southwest of the country was occupied for a decade. Norway was invaded in 1810 and 1812 during the Napoleonic Wars when it was a part of Denmark-Norway because Denmark was aligned to France, so obviously Denmark was invaded during that time as well. Finland, Estonia, and Latvia were all briefly invaded by small units during the Crimean War against Russia because they were all part of the Russian Empire at the time, and of course, Russia itself was invaded then too, as well as in 1918 when the British took over a large chunk of northern Russia for a time in their fight against the Bolsheviks. The territory of modern Ukraine was invaded by British army units during the Crimean War.
Really?
The British took over the Croatian island of Vis between
I just have to stop for a minute.
Why?
I mean, they're just moving across Europe, and it's like, yep, been there, been
I
there,
know, I
been
feel
there,
like-
been there. Pretty soon, the whole map's just going to be red. We have invaded
It
everyone.
can't be, though, right? I'm thinking it can't be.
Seeming to be that way.
The Ukraine surprised me.
A lot of this surprises me.
Yeah, I
but,
know.
You know.
invaded by British army units during the Crimean War. The British took over the Croatian island of Vis between 1807 and 1814 during their fight against Napoleon. The British army had boots and guns on the ground in Bosnia recently between 1992 and 95, fighting against the Bosnian Serbs, and around the same time, the RAF also carried out bombing strikes against Serbian Serb targets in Serbia in 1999. Montenegro was briefly blockaded and invaded in 1913 during the First Balkan War.
I don't remember
the
that.
British owned the westernmost Ionian islands of Greece between 1815 and 1863 before they gave them back, while Bulgaria was invaded and almost entirely occupied by the British Army between 1918 and 1919 at the end of World War I. Cyprus was a British protectorate between 1878 and 1914 when they decided to just outright annex it to piss off the Turks, and it remained annexed until 1960, except for two small chunks that are still British today. Turkey itself was massively invaded by the British during World War I, and part of it was occupied between 1919
I
and
didn't know that either.
1923.
Wow.
That wraps up Europe, so let's move on to Asia next. Modern-day Israel and Palestine, as well as Jordan, were British-controlled from the end of World War I to 1948 and 1946, respectively. Lebanon and Syria were both occupied from the Vichy French government briefly during World War II. Iraq was ruled between 1919 and 1932 and invaded again during the Second World War, and again in 1991, and again in 2003. Kuwait was a colony for over 60 years until 1966. Georgia and Azerbaijan were both invaded over again in 1991, and again in 2003. Kuwait was a colony for over 60 years until 1966.
I didn't know that.
I didn't
You know
either.
Kuwait was a colony?
I had no idea.
Really?
No,
Didn't know. Also wasn't alive in 1966 or 1899.
no.
Okay, didn't know.
Georgia and Azerbaijan were both invaded and occupied right at the end of World War I for a year. Iran has been invaded at least 3 times, with the most notable example being the joint Anglo-Soviet invasion of 1941. Turkmenistan was invaded in 1918 to prevent Bolshevik influence from spreading any further.
England?
Afghanistan is a favorite British invasion spot since it's been invaded in 1839, 1878, 1919, and again in 2001. Qatar, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, and Oman were all controlled by the British until the early 1970s, while a chunk of Yemen was controlled for over a century between 1839 and 1967. India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka were all, of course, invaded many times and outright ruled by the British Empire in parts for nearly 2 centuries between 1757 and
Okay, so just stop for a minute. Just stop for a minute. So, okay, this is insane. This is ludicrous, let's be honest, right? And yet, there's really no countries that have any ill will to you. I mean, how do you do that? It's like, hey, don't mind us. We're just going to invade you for a little bit.
And like you said, to not have any ill will towards this
I know.
country.
It's just kind of shocking. Okay, this is
It's incredible.
but too, again, like I said, they're kind of showing some places with wars, modern wars in the last, 100 years that wasn't just England or the UK, was allied militaries as well.
But to have having the visual is definitely helping.
It's kind of mind-blowing. It's a little insane. It's a little crazy. Okie dokie.
ruled by the British Empire in parts for nearly 2 centuries between 1757 and 1947. Nepal was invaded in 1814 but never successfully conquered. Bhutan was invaded in 1772 and again in 1864 and was sort of conquered as a protectorate between 1910 and 1948. Burma/Myanmar was invaded in 1826 and was definitely successfully conquered and ruled through 1947. Thailand was briefly invaded in 1945 since they were allied to Japan in World War II. And so was Vietnam in the same year, but that was to support the French government against the growing independence movement. Malaysia and Singapore were each conquered and ruled up until the 1950s and 1960s. Brunei was conquered and ruled up until the 1980s, whereas the Philippines were briefly invaded during the 7 Years' War. China got invaded a lot, and Hong Kong was a colony until as recently as 1997. And while not outright invaded, part of Japan was occupied following World War II between 1946 and 1952. And finally, Indonesia was invaded a bunch during the Napoleonic Wars since it was a Dutch colony aligned to France at the time.
All red.
Next up, Oceania. Australia and New Zealand, of course, were invaded by the British and established as colonies that each gained independence in 1931. Papua New Guinea was also a British colony for a time, as were the island countries of Fiji, Kiribati, the Solomon Islands, Tuvalu, and Vanuatu. Let's move back over to Africa next, which the British have violently visited a lot. In terms of just places the British outright colonized after invasions, there's the Gambia, Sierra Leone, Ghana, Nigeria, Egypt, Sudan, South Sudan, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Zambia, Malawi, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Namibia, and South Africa, along with parts of modern-day Somalia and Guinea. Senegal was briefly invaded and had some of their coastline taken over in the 1700s, while during the Second World War, the British invaded the French colonies of Djibouti, Madagascar, and Comoros.
Djibouti! Sorry, I never heard of that place, but Djibouti. They named that. Never mind. I'm just curious though, like, I don't know what I'm curious about. This is a lot.
It is a lot. I'm just very thankful for these visuals because it definitely kind of puts it in perspective for me.
What do people think though that live in the UK? Like, I'm sure there's got to be mixed feelings about this, right? Or no? Is it a pride thing? Let us know. Is this something you're proud of? Is this something you're like, I mean, they're all different reasons, right? It's not like,
Sure.
of course, World War II. We were all on the side
Yeah.
of good, right, against the bad. But they're all different reasons, and he's not going into specifics on every place as to what those reasons are per se.
Yeah.
But what is the general consensus, though? I'm just interested. It is insanity. It is insanity.
And it did seem like a lot of the countries, especially over the Middle East, that they were going in there for protection.
Well, yeah.
During
that's what I'm saying. So stuff
World
like
War
that,
II. Yeah,
fine,
that
right?
makes sense.
But then I don't know about some of the other ones. He's just kind of going for a short time, or for 10 years, or for 5 years. Some of it he's saying, I get it.
Right.
But some I just don't know. So I just want to know, what is the consensus and the feelings? This is
Let us
just
know.
like, make the map red already, man.
The Second World War,
crazy.
the British invaded the French colonies of Djibouti, Madagascar, and Comoros after they aligned themselves with the Nazi Vichy regime and
See?
the
Good
Italian
reason.
colonies of Libya, Eritrea, and Ethiopia, although they had also invaded Ethiopia much earlier in 1868. And as German colonies
But
right
why?
before World War I, the British also invaded Togo and Cameroon without annexing them afterwards. For the final area of the world left to discuss, let's move over to the Americas.
Yeah, let's
All
not.
of Canada was a British colony until 1931, while Newfoundland remained until 1949. The United States, of course, was a colony until
We know.
1776, and was invaded again in 1812, and the modern states of Oregon and Washington were claimed right up until 1840.
You're noticing all these typos? Look how he spelled Washington.
Yeah,
It's Washington. I noticed it earlier with Iraq. It was with a K instead.
I know.
I'm like, okay, good
Well,
job there, buddy.
cut him some slack.
I'm trying, but like, you will go back in your video.
You think you would double check
Is this
that?
the same guy we used for one of the videos with Australia? They spelled Australia wrong.
Might have been.
I want to hear this again.
The United States, of course, was a colony until 1776, and was invaded again in 1812, and the modern states of Oregon and Washington were claimed right up until 1846. As far as other outright British colonies here go, there was the Bahamas, Jamaica, Belize, Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Barbados, St. Lucia, Dominica, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, Trinidad and Tobago, and Guyana. Besides colonies, Cuba was invaded and occupied during the Seven Years' War in 1762.
I didn't know
Haiti
that.
was invaded in 1793 during
I
the
didn't know
French
that.
Revolutionary Wars. The Dominican Republic was invaded way back in 1655 in
I know
an
that.
attempt at conquest under Oliver Cromwell. Parts of the east coast of Honduras and Nicaragua were conquered and ruled for nearly 2 centuries until 1819. They sent the Navy to invade Mexico in 1861 to force them to repay some debts, and during the splendidly named War of Jenkins Ear, aka the more lame-sounding War of the Austrian Succession, the British invaded a lot of Spain's colonies, including Panama, a huge one into Colombia, and ultimately Peru. In 1796, the British took over Suriname because it was a Dutch colony, and they were allied with the revolutionary French and later Napoleon. They also invaded Martinique
sense.
and Guadeloupe because they actually were French during the Napoleonic War.
That's so like
This is
quintessentially
incredible.
British. They're French and they're close to the French. Go get them.
We were fighting the French, and you're friends with them, so we got to go home and get
Yep.
you.
That's
It's-
kind of hilarious in a way.
So mind-boggling. Like I've said it before, that the United Kingdom, England is
Being
such
so
a
small.
small
I know,
little
I know.
continent, yet they've been everywhere. And wow,
Y'all own the world, man.
it's incredible.
Y'all own the world.
I mean, the Navy
What was
is
it?
just
What was like?
amazing.
Yeah, like were you just like, hey, we want to own the world? It's
Go
interesting.
find us some land.
There's plenty of it. Well, then we want it. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Again, it's all about the reasoning for it, though. But
Mhm.
but the whole French thing just cracks me up a little bit. Now, I'm not trying to offend anybody. I love
No.
France. I actually do love France, and we plan on looking at France soon. So I don't know how soon, but soon.
Mhm.
I'm partial to your fries. Kidding. But no, I just find that funny. It's like if you have any ties to the French, and
look
you're
out.
friends with them, we're coming for you.
Also invaded Martinique and Guadeloupe because they actually were French during the Napoleonic Wars. Venezuela was invaded in 1902 as part of the so-called Venezuela crisis to force the country to repay some debts they had defaulted on, kind of like Mexico, while Argentina and Uruguay were both invaded during the Napoleonic Wars as well in 1806 when Spain and her colonies were still allied with Napoleon. And that pretty much sums up all of the territory the British have ever ruled and all of the countries this small island has ever invaded. There are a total of 65 countries today who
65.
celebrate their independence days from the British Empire.
Let's celebrate their
The Empire
independence.
used to rule over a quarter of all the world's land at the same time and was the
crazy.
biggest empire in human history. And
Yeah.
in total, today, there have been 117 modern countries that have been aggressively invaded by the British Armed Forces during some point in their histories, representing
Wow.
a total of 60% of all the world's nations, which is almost the same number of
Look at that.
countries that you can watch this video in.
Well, I mean, I knew it was a lot, but
Yeah.
seeing that map at the end, geez.
Yeah, the visualness to it definitely helped put it into perspective.
But you know what? You didn't come back after the 1800s on us. Heh.
That's
Yeah.
right.
We have a loving relationship. Isn't it good though? It's good though. Think about it. Like if it was another country, like I won't say what. Let's say it was an evil country that did all this. The
Mhm.
world would be very different.
Oh,
But
definitely.
then, what would it have been like if England hadn't done this?
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. These are just interesting
Yeah, we
questions in
don't
my
know.
head. Yeah, but it's interesting to think about it sometimes.
it is.
But then again, like
And scary at the same time.
yeah, kind of. I did enjoy it though, because like you said, see the map, all that. It's
Mhm.
just like insanity. I didn't know about a lot of it.
No, it's very impressive.
I'm kind of like, I want a longer video though that goes in more depth, like I was saying. But I'm assuming I shouldn't do that. But did you know all of these? Did you? Let us know in the comments what your thoughts were on the video. This was a fascinating video. I just wish it was longer. I like stuff like this, the history stuff, and then just seeing what, like Debbie said, such a small little group of islands.
Mm-hmm.
Jeez. But you're right, the Navy.
Massive.
The Navy was insane.
Yeah.
Still is.
The
In a cool
massive
way.
power that you guys had
Still do.
throughout history.
Yeah, still do.
I mean, it's incredible.
Well, I love this. If you guys liked it, please hit that like button and please do consider subscribing to the channel. We appreciate it very much if you do. And drop us a comment on your thoughts on the video. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. I'm just still looking. I still have the computer monitor in front of us. I'm still staring at the map. Just like, holy crap. It's vast. It's vast for sure. But thank you so much for watching. We'll be back on Friday. Hopefully you'll be here with us. Until then, as always, guys, please love like jazz.
Be as strong as Tyson.
Bye-bye.
Bye.